Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events live as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, malcontents, and how is everybody doing? Turn that down a little bit so I don't get a little bit echo. Hey, and I guess I need to mute the phone with the, that is the, hey, you're the on the air beep. It's always kind of weird. You get your own on the air beep. This is probably at the top of the hour here. I want to say, go ahead and spam those hearts on Twitter and Facebook. Let people believe that there's something actually worthwhile to watch here tonight. Really appreciate that. Also, let those mods and admins know that you appreciate all of the hard work that they do. Everyone's a little crispy around the edges, so we really appreciate everything that you do so that we can continue doing everything that we do. First thing I want to start off with is we're doing another old school show. Studio 2 and 3 is still not put back together. And I will need to work on that probably Wednesday. Things got a little sideways over the weekend, and I'm really trying to compartmentalize some things for self-care. And I probably maybe took it a little too far this weekend as far as not re-setting up Studio 2 and 3. So here we are. We're still in old school Studio 1 and an old school show, wearing my old school Aqua Teen Hunger Force shirt. And I'm loving and seeing all the comments there as all of the regulars come in the house. Much appreciated. Very, very much. And bear with me for just one more second here. I don't know what I just clicked. I just know I hope I didn't do something bad. Oh, good. I didn't do anything bad. Bear with me just one second here. When I'm at Studio 1, I can, and I didn't do it before we got started here, which is my bad. I can have a dedicated chat client where I can see all of your chats, not just what's scrolling by on the screen real quick. So just give me a second to pull that up, and we're going to go ahead and get truly started. Okay, there we go. Now I can kind of follow along on a big screen chat with y'all. First thing I want to start off with is a correction on a tweet that was made last week. There was something that was in the context of things. There was a little potential to misread some things, and the stranger reached out to us. The stranger article does not say that there's a continued ongoing investigation with the FBI into any of the officers involved, full stop. We don't know if there is anything or anything not. I did tell the stranger that we would address this tonight. It would be top, and it is also on the ticker. I have said many times, getting things right is really critical to us, and we own our mistakes when we make mistakes. It's a mistake. We apologize, and thank you for keeping us accountable for our errors. And so, with that said, let's kind of jump into some of the stuff that's going on. There's actually a fair amount of CHOP news that we have going on. The first piece of CHOP news that we have is we're going to talk about the breaking news first. We are not going to talk about, we'll talk about the breaking news first, and then we will talk about the news that came out over the weekend second. The breaking news is that Marcel Long, who was charged with first-degree murder in August of 2020 for Lorenzo Anderson, who was shot on the edge of CHOP in the very early morning hours of June 20, was arrested today in Des Moines. Marcel Long has been on the run. There was a period, I believe he was. There was some speculation that he might have been, south of here in the California area. He was picked up after a short foot chase, but otherwise without incident, walking on the side of the road. King County Task Force had gotten intelligence that Marcel Long was back in the area, and he has been arrested today for the shooting death. Lorenzo Anderson, 19. That shooting death believed to be gang-related. In August of 2020, at the same time when those charges came out, it was determined by police officials that the murder itself had nothing to do with CHOP, just beyond the geography of the area of where that happened. So Marcel Long arrested today and is in King County Jail. I believe I had read bail was set at $2 million. Mods, admins, can you make sure I got that right? I believe it said the bail was set at $2 million. For Marcel Long. Next thing on CHOP, which is this amazing piece of investigative journalism. KUOW does amazing investigative journalism, have mad respect for all of the journalists over there. And over the weekend on Saturday, there was a story that came out. We know who ordered, or we believe we know who ordered the evacuation of the East Precinct on June 8th. And we shared that story. We did a 5 Fast Facts. We shared on our Facebook page on that story. It's a very lengthy piece that came out with a lot of detail. Basically, the storyline that comes out of that, and there's some pieces that we know that after May 30th, the city and the city leadership, police, and fire have become, oh my God, I love some of the comments here where you guys are talking about your different food items. That's fantastic. I seeing stuff flowing by in the comments, and I'm like, what? And I was like, oh, that's right. We have that on as a ticker question for the night. So I love that. Oh, Kurt, you just haven't had them made right. Well, maybe not. Total sidebar, liver and onions growing up, Kurt. My mother, she really knows how to make them, and I really like them. And I have been told if your first experience with liver and onions is that if it's made wrong, you are traumatized for life. What do we know? We know, of course, on May 30th, there was the significant incidents that happened in downtown. We also then know there's the Pink Umbrella riot. We also know that an assistant police chief was ultimately demoted because of the decisions that they made on June 1. There was this significant escalation by the Seattle Police Department. We know these things. What KUOW has revealed is the conversations that were going on behind the scene between the mayor's office, between Chief Best, between senior leaders within the Seattle Police Department, and a little bit with Harold Scoggins, just a little bit in that story. because they're part of what comes into Harold Scoggins is the Seattle Fire Department is consulted on, well, what happens if the East Precinct building is burned down? And basically, they're like, all of those buildings connect to each other. If that building is set on fire, we will lose the entire block, and people will probably die, and it will not be a good thing. In those conversations, as the situation continues to escalate along the Western Barricade, starting with the Pink Umbrella Riot on June 1st, and then we have the incident on June 6th, and I think June 6th is where a lot of people discovered us as a at that time we're straddling the line between blogger, news organization, streamer, but I think that's where a lot of people discovered us from our coverage on June 6th. And it was in the aftermath of this really, as we know, also strong and inappropriate reaction by the Seattle Police Department. There is massive conversations going on between the mayor's office and SPD and some people in the council. And basically, the mayor's office staffers are telling the Seattle Police Department, if they do not de-escalate, if they don't come up with some solution here, there are no allies for Seattle police within the city council. They are the only allies, and they, meaning the Durkin staffers, will be all out of a job in a week. Durkin will be ejected as mayor. The council will take over, and then you, Seattle police, won't have any support left in the city. Chief Carmen Best, in those meetings, was advocating for outreach to the protesters. Chief Carmen Best felt that they had identified command staff within Seattle Police who could do outreach to specific people within what was the budding protest community, to try to diffuse the situation that was going on. And basically everybody was against this. And one of the people that was most vocally against this was Assistant Chief Tom His name's a little funky, and I want to make sure I get it right because I speak perfect American. Give me one. I want to make sure I should have had it up on the friggin' screen when I got on the air here too. It's Mahaffey. Yes, Tom Mahaffey. I just want to make sure I get it. It's kind of a weird spelling for my brain. And as I said, I speak perfect American, even though Mahaffey comes across. I want to put an R in this name. Even when I was typing it, I was like, R, take the R out. Tom Mahaffey, Assistant Chief, been with Seattle Police about 25, 27 years, moved up through the ranks, was West Precinct Commander as part of his career trajectory, completely against this. Then you have a relatively peaceful day on the 7th, which just blows apart. So we have the 6th, and I don't even know what to call the 6th. That's the IED. That's the IED candle, the 6th. And then on the 7th, you have a relatively peaceful day. And then we have the shooting. The other thing that happened to those metal barricades, I don't know if people remember the metal barricades that were brought in. Those apparently came from Joint Base Lewis McChord and were deemed unassemblable, and protesters had taken them apart in about 20 minutes. Ironically, having them taken apart probably prevented a car attack or a worse shooting situation in that event that happened. So we have the car attack, the shooting, and then the shooter basically just running to the police lines. And then, of course, we find out that they have a relative who is an officer in the East Precinct, and that spreads pretty quickly. You have the protester that is hit directly in the chest with the flashbang grenade and almost dies from that. You have multiple people, including people who are identified as media, who are shot at very close range with rubber bullets, and the whole situation really devolves on Saturday nights. That Sunday night. That Sunday night, the 7th, is nuts. That's where you have some trash dumpster fires are set up outside. Outside of the boundaries would be CHOP, outside over by Numos. It's just a crazy night. And then the decision is made that they're going to allow the protesters to march past the East Precinct. They are going to end the Western Barricade. They're going to disassemble it. And there's this decision that is made. At least that's what Carmen Best thought. However, Tom Mahaffrey, 5 hours after they have this agreement about that's what they're going to do, makes the decision independently to evacuate the East Precinct. Now, in our documentary, Can You Hear Us?, we have Carmen Best making her statement that they are not abandoning the East Precinct, that they are, taking steps, that they're going to allow protesters to march by. While Carmen Best was making that statement, the East Precinct was already evacuated. The barricades came down, protesters came in, and Chief Carmen Best apparently still didn't know that a decision had been made by Mahaffey without consulting her to evacuate the East Precinct. Then we get into the morning, and again, this is the KUOW story. Then you get into the morning, and apparently by the KUOW story, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, I'll freely admit that, Carmen Best was expecting that the police were going to come back. They're going to come back to the East Precinct. So she wakes up in the morning, and the police aren't back, and you have essentially the start of CHOP going on there. And she's like, what's going on? And that's when she finds out that this decision was essentially made behind her back to evacuate the East Precinct. So you have almost a mutiny within the command staff of the police department making a decision without the police chief. Of course, what we don't know is, were any staffers included in that? Was Jenny Durkin included in that? Now, Jenny Durkin says that she didn't know anything about it. And she has insisted that she doesn't know anything about it. But we also know Jenny Durkin and Carmen Best and Harold Scoggins' texts have all gone bye-bye. We also know that 5 senior leaders within SPD, their texts have also gone and disappeared. So I think one of the common questions immediately becomes, where are Tom Mahaffey's texts? I think that this is a really big question. The other thing that jumped out at me in the KUOW investigation, which goes really deep. It is really thorough. It is an impressive piece of journalistic work. It's on our Facebook page. If you can, KUOW, go to their site and read it. If you want to, you can go to our Facebook page. You can find the link there. It is a lengthy read. I think it's a worthy read. Never in the conversations does anything come up about threats to the precinct, specific or non-specific. There is no discussion on, well, the FBI says this will happen. Because remember, that was part of why, well, we're not going to let you march by, because we have, the FBI has information that parties unknown want to burn down the East Precinct. And yet, in the weak conversation, weak, not as in I'm weak, but weak conversation that leads up to this decision, there appears to be no conversation on, well, if we leave, the FBI says. Don't forget, the Seattle police, the right-wing media, the Fox News of the world, right, paint the East Precinct as under siege, as surrounded, as, right, it's going to be attacked at any moment. And yet, in the KUOW and in these research and in the conversations that are going on, these aren't in the conversations. If that was really true, we're under siege, we're under attack, Why would Carmen Best be advocating on the 7th, after a week of the Western Barricade? You know what? I think what we need to do to diffuse the situation is sit down and just talk with some people and maybe just let them march by, because what we're doing isn't working right now. And then this has to raise another question. Mahaffey was completely against this plan of outreach and talk and de-escalation. And according to the KUOW story, at a couple of points, he isn't like the only person at the table, but he is the most vocal person at the table on we can't do this and this is why. So why then, 24 hours later, does he, behind Carmen's Best back, order the evacuation of East Precinct? Now, this gets into a sticky conversation, because I know there's a subset of our audience, all cops are bastards, fuck 12, abolish the police. I get all that. And I've said many times, I'm a big proponent of defund. By some people would define me as an abolitionist, because my viewpoint is you need to tear it down, including the foundation, and replace it with something else. Some people describe that as abolition. Some people describe that as a pretty strong view of defund. I'm not going to get into it tonight. Take your pick. But now the question has to come up. If Mahaffey is at the table on the 7th, advocating not to negotiate, essentially, and to, we'll steal a line from Mike Solon, hold the line, then why all of a sudden the flip and no communications when the plan is then bought in by Carmen Best and the mayor's office? And then this raises the question, for everything that Carmen Best got wrong, and for essentially having a mutiny under her command, which at the end of the day, when you chafe it all out, if this is really how it went down, if the KUOW story has it nailed, then Carmen Best shouldn't be police chief. She essentially had a command mutiny and was not aware of a situation going on that was at a national level. But did Tom Mahaffey throw Carmen Best under the bus in doing what he did? And did we throw a woman leader? Because at the end of the day, Carmen Best is a black woman who came up through the ranks. All cops are bastards, F12. I get it. I do. But let's not conflate's not the wrong word. Let's not just get so compartmentalized to go, whoa, wait a minute. Because basically they went behind the back of a black woman leader, and a very white man made this decision. Here's the other thing. Brandy Cruz texted very early on the 8th that she had been told by 3 officials, and this is in the KUOW story, that the East Precinct would be evacuated. Not that people are going to go, that the East Precinct was going to be evacuated. That's in the KUOW story. Clearly, Mahaffey, if the KUOW story is right, and he made this decision based on the investigative journalism that they did, then that means Mahaffey was talking to Brandy Cruz. And it also means, because they said 2 others, that tells me that Brandy Cruz was talking to other people that are in there. So then where does all of that fit in to this picture? And then how cozy is that relationship? And at the end of the day, there have been other reporters here in Seattle that have probably crossed lines in the coziness department in their support for certain organizations. So it's not anything that, but it does raise more questions. And of course, here's the other question that nobody's answered. What were the specific threats? And then the thing about specific threats that got kind of walked back, well, was it specific threats? Whether, it's more than chatter, and what happened on the 8th? after Seattle police left. Well, that's in our documentary. The camera was rolling, and ours weren't the only cameras there. You could see actually on the 8th, Renee, who wasn't associated with us at that time, Renee's actually walking around the 8th, and Joey is actually in our documentary video. He is standing, my camera is pointing at him, and we're maybe 15 feet apart. So, I mean, Joey's there, and Dan, I don't think he had the street command. Here's the thing. Dan, I'm seeing your comment. So what I need to dig up and see, because there was the commander that was replaced, I believe after the first or the second, but I don't know if Mahaffey is the person that replaced that commander. That's the person who was demoted. That was the person that basically they feel is the one who ordered this massive escalation that caused the Pink Umbrella riot. What I don't know is who was the commander that replaced him. It's a good question. But we also know, going back to that first hour within there, there aren't leaders. You can't call them organized, right? They're people with a microphone. That's all I can call them. Or like, we're making sure nobody's touching this building because we're going to get blamed. Black Lives Matter will get blamed if anybody tries to burn this building. And so we're just not going to let it happen. And of course, what happened? Building had a very minor incident, I believe like on the 11th or 12th. And that was immediately put out by people within Chaz. It wasn't CHOP yet at that point. It was immediately put out by Chaz. It was a very, very small fire. And that was the only incident, and it was done in a place essentially where the wall is brick or stone or stucco or whatever the cover up there. Mahaffey still has a job. Mahaffey still has a job, right? Because this hasn't come from the OPA. I'm reading your question here, Stephanie. So you got to understand, this is an investigative report from KUOW, public PBS. They do a tremendous amount of investigative reporting, and they have done some of the best investigative reporting related to CHOP. So this isn't anything that's come out of OPA. OPA's been investigating this, but we still don't have the answer from OPA. So what were the specific threats from the FBI? Because there's nothing in the KUOW story to indicate that there was a lot of concern about that. Now, that isn't to say that there wasn't. It may have just ended up on the cutting room floor. It may not have been germane to the story that we're doing. But then what's with the FBI? Why did Mahaffey make this decision and not consult with Carmen Best? And let's remember, Mahaffey was against this plan on the 7th. He was, he was a hold the line. We're going to hold the line. Paraphrasing. But that was his view. And that's what he fought for in this meeting on the 7th. When it was brought up to go, let's let them march past and negotiate. And Carmen Bess is making this statement, like when the words come out of her mouth, we are not abandoning the East Precinct, it was already abandoned. It's really, really stunning. And something that Omari talked about today, which I think, goes back to this under siege. They're under siege, they're under attack. The protesters were there, saw them packing up, saw them getting ready to leave. Nobody took action. We arrived there within seconds of the barricades, of people walking past the barricades. We missed just that initial push. And I hadn't even started streaming, and I'm essentially running because I'm like, I got to get up here. I hear what's going on. I actually ran up to the East Precinct and never even realized it. I got to that intersection. I'm like, wait a minute, where am I? Because all of a sudden nothing looked right. And I was like, I just ran past the barracks. So I'm at the tail end, essentially, of that group that moved up the hill. And then at that point, I start streaming. And yes, I'll freely admit a lot of it was real shaky stuff at the beginning because it was just literally like, whoa, I got to start streaming. And that's kind of how I rolled. Stephanie apparently didn't consult with anybody, but consulted with Brandy Cruz. Allegedly. I mean, somebody told Brandy Cruz. Brandy Cruz said, again, that she had multiple sources in her tweet. somebody told Brandy Cruz they were evacuating the East Precinct, which then, of course, raises questions on uh, uh, the connections that they have. And it is a little bit interesting to me that Brandy Cruz would tweet out, I have it from multiple sources. I'm paraphrasing. I should have pulled up the tweet. I don't know. One of the mods or admins or researchers, can't be that hard to find Brandy Cruz. It's going to be late June 7th or early June 8th, unless it's been deleted. I don't know. Maybe it's been deleted. Should be up there. I know she's pretty vocal on social, so it might require a fair amount of scrolling to get to June 7th or June 8th. But if you drop the link, that would be good. Did she not try to reach out to Carmen Best? Did she not try to reach out to the mayor's office? Because I'm under the impression by the KUW story, there would be denials. We're not evacuating. We also know from our documentary, Brandy Cruz isn't there, but Q13 is there, and other stations are there, and nobody asked the question as Carmen Best is making this statement of, we will not evacuate, we are not evacuating the East Precinct. Now, potentially they were told, again, could have been told, no questions, I'm making a statement, goodbye. But nobody was like, Chief Best, we've been told by sources you are evacuating the East Precinct. Do you want to comment? Chief Best might have just kind of, as she's walking away, going, I just said, we're not evacuating the East Precinct. But then we would have a little bit more of the answer. The bottom line to all this is we're seeing the dysfunction at a city level being laid bare in the paralysis and the decision-making process that went into that first week, which led up to CHOP, the formation of Chaz and the formation of CHOP and everything that has happened. And the lack of transparency, oversight, and accountability over a year later, especially when we compare this to other cities. Look at Minneapolis, where all this started, right? Let's look at Minneapolis. Dude who broke out the windows and essentially got the fire started at AutoZone. Identified Aryan biker dude. They know who he is. Warrants out for arrest. Not arrested yet. The two brothers who are white nationalists who started the fire at the 3rd Precinct that really started everything in Minneapolis. Identified, arrested, tried, convicted, asses are in jail. Derek Chauvin, convicted, in jail for 22 and a half years. Looking at other cases, although we served concurrently, apparently, and probably will not have any additional time tacked on there. But we have that there. There has been some police reforms instituted in Minneapolis, admittedly not enough. And of course, this narrative that the political right continues to drive, and the Fox News and the Owns and Minneapolis is burnt. Minneapolis is not burned to the ground, right? It's just such just like Seattle's not burned to the ground. Brandy Cruz actually, and this is going to come across as bagging Brandy Cruz. Brandy, I'm not bagging you on this one. Brandy Cruz ran a story. The headline was definitely to throw the red meat out. I will say that, to get the comments going and drive that. But, ran the story about the mayor is trying to get people to come back downtown and yada, yada. And there's, hundreds of comments like, there's going to be no tourism. Nobody wants to go back to downtown. Downtown's covered in feces and stuff. It's like, you got to be kidding me. I was in... first of all, I could tell when people say this, these are people that haven't been into Seattle. Okay. We were distributing bottled water during the heat wave in multiple encampments for the unhomed. And in some of the most established and entrenched areas. Now, I will say, one of the areas we're in didn't smell very pleasant. I didn't see any feces at all. I didn't see one needle. We just weren't looking good enough. I'm walking around all over the place. And you better believe my happy ass was looking down, because the last thing I want is a needle stick and then 6 months of AIDS tests and hepatitis shots and everything else. I was an EMT. I get protocols. And I was just walking around in sneakers. I wasn't walking around like in steel-toed reinforced combat boots. My ass was looking down. Didn't see any of this stuff. And believe me, if there was anything on the ground when it's 100 degrees outside, anything that's baking in that sun is not going to smell like perfume. The other thing is, downtown is packed. Downtown businesses on the waterfront are in panic. They're not in panic right now because of a lack of business. They're in panic right now because they don't have enough employees. Everybody's out. You could just see it with the traffic. You could see it with how parking has gotten. I-5, like through the dome, is a parking lot. The passes were a parking lot with traffic backups again. Cruise ships are coming back in again. Pike Place Market has a lot more people going in. The question is, are people... We were asking our mayoral candidates this. Are people going to come back? And right now, people are coming back. But hundreds of Brandy's commenters are like, oh no, it's fallen in the ocean and stuff, right? It goes back to this false narrative on the right of, Seattle's burned down, Portland's burned down, Minneapolis is burned down. All they do is kill each other. And like Chicago's like number 28 on gun violence. And there are Republican cities that are way ahead in per capita violence than Chicago. And Chicago, and the story is the violence has gone down in Chicago, and that's not saying a lot. I'll freely admit that, but it is heading in the right direction, where you have cities like Tulsa, which is as red can get, and the numbers are going really fast in the wrong direction. I've probably hammered this story to the point in going off on this. Welcome Industrial Gloves. I like your name. There you go. See, you're in Pike Place. It was packed. And this is what I've seen when I go down. The other thing is, certainly this time a year ago, if I wanted to go film in downtown or anywhere in Seattle, finding a parking spot, piece of cake. I quickly realized by this point that if I'm going to go and look for a parking spot to film something that is going on, padding time for traffic, padding time to find a parking spot, totally unnecessary. About 6 weeks ago, I was like, oh, I see. I have to start adding my 30 minutes in case there's traffic, and I need to factor in about 10 minutes circling around looking for a parking spot now. As far as I could see, it's all gotten better. It's still not great. Yeah, America's reopening. It's a great way to put it on the sidewalk day. I like that. Of course, that brings up our next topic. How much is America reopening? Delta variant tonight, Springfield, Missouri, where in the state of Missouri, as I understand it, never had a statewide mask mandate, has pretty low vaccination numbers in the rural areas, in particular in the southern half of the state. You have a governor that is pretty anti-science. This is also the same governor who's like, we're not enforcing federal Second Amendment rules. Screw you. Want a gun? Go get 10. I have a theory behind that. Save that for a different conversation because it's like it's a little tinfoil hatty theory, but that's why I'm like, I don't want to get into it. In Springfield, Mercy Hospital there has had to open up their 6th COVID ward. They now have 133 COVID patients. Basically, this is Delta that they are treating right now. And what they're saying is in the rural areas around Springfield, there are no hospitals. So you get sick, you end up going to Springfield to the hospital. At the peak of COVID over the wintertime, they had 5 wards. So they now have more wards. The other thing that's happened there is the state of Missouri has asked for FEMA support, and the federal government is sending 2 COVID strike teams. They may have already arrived there. That request went in last week because the number of cases in Missouri are skyrocketing. Delta is showing that it can break through the COVID vaccine. However, we're seeing a growing amount of evidence out of Europe, particularly out of Israel, that when it breaks through, the people that are getting Delta are only getting mildly sick. And there are some challenges with Delta. It's more highly transmissible than the UK variant, which was more highly transmissible than the original variant. The original variant was more transmissible than flu. The UK variant was approaching mumps. And now we have this Delta variant, which is past mumps, and mumps is really transmissible. We're not anything like measles. Measles is probably one of the most transmissible major infectious diseases, which is why it's really critical we keep it stamped down. It's super, super contagious. Measles, the number that's the gnarly one. But we are again way past. We're way past kind of mumps and the transmissibility thing, which isn't great. The challenge also with Delta is where the UK variants, the original variants, the South African variant, people, one of the first like red flag, lost a sense of taste, lost a sense of smell. And Delta isn't doing that. Delta is initial symptoms of Delta are very similar to RSV, which is very similar kind of sinus infection. People get sore throat, they get a cough, they get a little bit touch of a runny nose, they get a fever. It doesn't start like COVID. And so you have this almost perfect storm of some of these states like Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri to a lesser extent, very low vaccination rates. People are ripping off masks. And I'm going to talk about masks in a minute because I've noticed something that's happened in our area with masks. People are taking off the masks. And so in taking off the masks, we had a little bump in flu because right at the tail end of flu floating around, they got a little bit of toehold, but flu doesn't do well in the warm weather. So the flu's gone away. But colds, upper respiratory stuff, and RSV is going yeehaw because it has wonderful mucous membranes to crawl up into again because people have been wearing masks. Then you have this disease that in COVID, the Delta variant, that looks like it, so people aren't raising their hand and going, wow, I think this is more than a cold, until it's way past more than a cold. And then even when it gets to that point, people, particularly people who are anti-vaxxers, COVID deniers, and younger people who even are like, maybe it's COVID. I'm young, it'll be okay. They're showing up a lot sicker. And of course, when they're sick like this, they are spreading it around. And so we are seeing some states where the number of people who have COVID have gone up 50, 60% in 2 weeks. If you look at the national numbers for number of people infected, the numbers are going like this. Depends where you live. 95 to 99% of the people that are in hospitals are unvaccinated. Depends on what state you're in and what region you're in. 95 to 99%. And here's the thing, where the numbers are starting to go up nationally as an average state. And if you look at our King County numbers, guess what? They're going up. They're not going up a lot, but they plateaued and they're starting to go the other way and in the wrong direction. And so what's going to happen is we're going to start seeing the death numbers go up in about 3 weeks because we know that infection is a leading indicator, which then goes to hospitalization, and death is a trailing indicator, right? You don't get, I've said this so many times, you don't get a positive COVID test and drop dead 4 hours later. You get a positive COVID test, and then you get sicker, unless you're already really sick. And then you either don't do or you don't. The other thing that they're seeing with Delta is long haul symptoms. For some people, it seems to be going after the pancreas in particular, but they're seeing a lot of the other COVID long haul. And the question, of course, when we say COVID long haul is, Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent and I were talking about this. We don't know how long is long. We know for certain things, right? If you say have heart muscle damage from COVID, you have scarring on your lungs from COVID, or if you have renal damage from COVID. Yeah, we get that that is. But things like loss of taste, loss of sense of smell, is that 12 months? Is it 5 years? Is it forever? We don't know, right? Because this has only been around for 18 or 20 months at this point. So we just don't know. I was going to say I was going to talk about Joy. I'm actually going to be probably Reading is usually a stopping off point for me when I go to Cali, and I'm leaving for Cali in about 2 weeks. So I will be in Reading. There's actually two restaurants in particular that I really like in Reading. I said pass on one of them when I went there in the fall because they were takeout only, and I really wanted to do a sit down. There was another place that was a sit down. I was wicked concerned because of the geography of Reddings, and the cases were starting to go up at that point. But I was like, I really want to stretch my legs. I want to stretch my legs and get out of the car for a little bit. So anyway, I segued. I noticed when we kind of got to June 30 and maybe over the 4th of July weekend, and I did it too. I was like, you know what, Matt? I'm vaxxed. I'm healthy. I'm going to be mask off. And there were a couple of times where I went into a couple of stores and they were really packed, and I felt a little uncomfortable. And if people have seen me in the field, and I know a number of malcontents have seen me in the field, generally outside, I have not been wearing a mask. On the outside, I'm feeling pretty confident at this point. I keep a mask on me. There have been times when I've been outside in the field and a person is talking to a mask. I've pulled the mask out to put it on to be respectful to that. But I noticed something this weekend when I went and did some retail stuff this weekend. I saw a lot more masks. I saw people are putting masks back on. This is so funny. This conversation is going about In-N-Out right now. And so it is something that I noticed. And right now, what my view is, if I walk into like a big box store, it doesn't matter if it's a grocery, the name of the store doesn't matter. Let's say I walk into a big box store and it's like 8 in the morning and the only cars in the parking lot are the people that work there. And I walk in the store and it's empty. I'm probably not putting on my mask. That's my view. I'm vaxxed. I'm healthy. If I walk into a store and it looks like the day before Thanksgiving, I'm putting on a mask at this point. If I'm outside, if I'm just going for a walk or I'm walking in the yard, I'm not wearing a mask. I think I will probably go back to, if I'm in a really, really big crowd, I'm probably going to mask up again. I just don't want the long haul stuff, right? I can be told all day long, hey, you're vaxxed, Delta will just make you miserable. It's not, probably not even going to put you in the hospital. But the long haul stuff, this is scary to me. And this probably gets into the last part of the conversation tonight, which is I've been looking at the numbers at unemployment numbers and trying to read the tea leaves here, because there's some things that don't add up. And what doesn't add up is we have this, oh, God. Ursula, I've just read your comment. There's some things that when I look at the data that don't add up in my head. We know that there's 9 million plus open jobs. We also know that there is this theory that, well, it's just people are collecting unemployment because of federal handouts and they just don't want to work. And that's why. But when we look at that data, when we look at the unemployment data, we look at the 22 states that said we're ending the federal programs. And some of those states now have more than a month of data, like Missouri. And guess what happened in Missouri? Unemployment numbers went up a little bit after they kicked everybody off. Now, the numbers, you got to remember, because unemployment and how they count it is a little complicated. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is a nonpartisan organization, and they calculate national unemployment figures. They do actually, what they do is they do phone surveys. Like a lot of people think here the state gives them, that's not how it works. There are 6 numbers, U1 through U6. So they call them U1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The number you see published in the news, the 5.9% number, that is the U3. To be on the U3 number, you have to be collecting unemployment. That's part of the criteria to fall in U3. If you've been kicked off of unemployment, then the U3 number should go down. And so in a state like Missouri, and I get that again, I say how it's calculated, the numbers for Missouri should have gone down, but they didn't. The number went up. 0.1%, but the number went up. If you were on PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, PUC, or the federal extended benefits, and you were kicked out because the state's like, we're not doing it anymore, so you're out. And on this date, that's your last check. The U6 number, you would then move to the U5 or the U6 number. The U6 number includes people who are part-time employed, underemployed. So U6 counts people that potentially have a job, but they're not in their chosen vocation, or they are not working the number of hours that they want to work. So they're counted as underemployed. If you're kicked off of that, you're in what's called the U5. And there's other things that I don't want to get into it. But when I look at the numbers, they don't add up. Right now, according to the available data, if we look at the per capita of everyone in the United States, this is an important point. I know we don't have a lot of chuds that watch anymore, but this is a really important point. When I throw out these numbers, I know some people are just going to run with it and go, see, half of America isn't working. Yeah, got to remember that whole number is people over 65, people who are under 18. You got people who are laying in hospital beds. You got moms that got newborns. You've got people that are fully disabled in that entire number. So right now we're at 46 out of 100 people in the United States are working. They have some, they're doing, now they could be U6. So in other words, again, they could be working part-time or not in their vocation and can't find a job in what they want to do, but they are working. At the peak of the Trump period, which was in May of 2018, it was 48 out of 100 of all Americans, not of the available workforce of all Americans. And we know when we were at that, we were almost 2 full percentage points under what economists consider full employment. Well, what's full employment? Full employment is generally considered, depends on the economist. I was taught when I went to college, admittedly, that's becoming a lot more years ago. I get it. But I was taught full unemployment was about 5. Full employment, not unemployment, full employment was about 5%. You are always going to have a percentage of people who are incapable of working, have quit their job, have finished school and are actively looking to get into the workforce, or they left the workforce and want to get back into the workforce. So you always are going to have a group of people. The lowest unemployment ever was in the United States was about 1.2% during World War II of the eligible workforce. And that's because people were dealing with war effort or fighting the war. So at the height of the Trump economy, the Trump unemployment situation, we were 1.5, 1.75 points below full employment. So what you're getting, you're starting to get into the ragged edge of people on the workforce. And I had, in hindsight, probably from a political standpoint, a very conservative, be surprised by this, a very conservative economics professor. I realize that now, didn't realize it as a student. Basically part of his argument was once you kind of start getting into 4%, he gets what he calls the terminally unemployed, people who can't hold jobs. That's part of the reason that you have this. And the only way that you're going to get these people working is have a job market. Okay, variable. I want a Whataburger in Seattle so bad I'd weigh 300 pounds if there was one. You end up with a job market that is so strong that the terminally employed can work. But then when you reach that point, you run the risk of inflation, and you're hitting peak productivity, yada, yada, yada. So here's the question. When I look at the numbers, it looks like 3 to 5 million people have disappeared out of the workforce. And when we look at the unemployment numbers, it doesn't add up. So you could go total tinfoil hat. So total tinfoil hat is they lied to us on the number of COVID deaths. There were a lot more people that died. That doesn't feel like the answer. It's really hard to hide that many bodies. We know that. So that isn't it. We know that from World War II history. It's really, really hard to hide bodies when you start getting into hundreds of thousands or millions. So we know that. Okay? So don't even go there. I'm shooting that conspiracy theory down. We know this. We know 600,000 plus people have died. 606,000 as of tonight. And of course, not all of those 606,000 people were of working age, but some people were working age. So there is a percentage of people that we have lost who were employed, including people over 65. Just because you're over 65 doesn't mean you don't work. There are a lot of people in this country who can't retire. There are some people who continue to work because it gives them a sense of purpose. It keeps their mind fresh, right? There are some people who are Walmart greeters who are, this late 70s, 80s person that looks like they're ready to fall over at any second. There are some people who are there because that's their survival. There's other people who are there because it gives them a reason to wake up in the morning, and that's why they're there. So we know that there are some people in that group, but not all 600,000. We know 3 million mothers are kicked out of the workforce because they have childcare issues, because childcare, daycares, it was teach at home, right? Schools were closed. Childcare and daycares were hard to find. That is improving, but the cost of daycare has skyrocketed because there's a labor shortage. So we know that there's 3 million women who have been knocked out of the workforce. Some by choice. I'm going to stay home with my kids. You know what? I like this, and we can make it happen. And some not by choice. Now that kind of starts to add up to it. But then the next thing you have is this COVID long haulers. And they say, because there's no official numbers on COVID long haulers, but 20 to 30% of people who get COVID to moderate or beyond become COVID long. And there's some people who are asymptomatic, particularly younger people, who, what we've learned, right, 6, 8, 12 weeks later, all of a sudden have a stroke or all of a sudden have a heart condition. They were asymptomatic the whole time. They didn't even know they had COVID. They're doing the PSR test and go, well, you had COVID. This is why you've now had a stroke. This is why you have all these blood clots. It's not liberty that there is no child care. The problem is there's a scarcity of child care because there's a scarcity of workers. Now, let's talk about COVID long haulers. Let's say you're a chef. And I don't even and I'm not talking like fancy chef here. I mean, we're talking above Olive Garden where they basically throw everything in a microwave. But let's say you're a chef, particularly if you're working at one of these small restaurants and you've lost your sense of taste and sense of smell post-COVID. How exactly do you work? And how can anybody look me straight in the eyes and say, they can still work as a chef? Can't work as a chef with no sense of taste and no smell. It's impossible. Well, it's not. They could work, and everything they're going to make is going to taste like ass because they have no sense of taste and they have no sense of smell. Oh, Melly. Oh, Melly. Melly's been running a fever right now. Yeah, and that's the other thing is childcare has become very, very expensive, and we've done the numbers for that. Here's what I believe. We're less than a percentage point from full employment. If I went back and I looked at other historical data, at other I looked during because we had a big boom during the Clinton years. There was a boom. Bush 43 had a boom in the middle. He had a recession on this side, he had a recession on that side, he had a boom in the middle. And so I looked at those numbers. And then Obama, there was this very, 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 very slow improvement coming out of the Great Recession. And when I look at the Clinton boom, when I look at the Bush 43 boom, they only get to maybe like 4.1, 4.2, 4.3%, which gets back into this idea of terminal unemployment, right? And you have this percentage of people looking. We're less than a percentage point in this country away from reaching full employment. There are a number of states in the country today that are way past full employment. Like unemployment in South Dakota is 2.8%. So they're way past, right? You're really kind of starting, when you get to 2.8%, you truly are starting to dip into people that struggle to hold a job. Now, part of the reason that you have unemployment in places like North Dakota, Wyoming, and South Dakota is so low, tourism's coming back in those areas. The second thing is, particularly North Dakota, Wyoming, where the price of oil has gone up, this has created more jobs in the oil field. Yeah, that's right. When oil's below $45 a barrel, it's actually bad for America. If oil goes over $100 a barrel, it's not great for America either. But if it's somewhere between 45 and 100, if you allegedly like carbon creating, planet destroying jobs, if that's your jam, you don't want $45 a barrel oil, or I should say you don't want $30 a barrel oil, because it's really bad for American jobs in these places. And what you have are all of these wellheads that have to be set up for the last mile to start producing. And so this is why you have unemployment so low. And these areas have had chronic unemployment because if you're not in North Dakota for work, sorry, North Dakota, there's a whole, people vote with their wallets. There are not a whole lot of people voting for their wallets to go, I know, let's move to beautiful North Dakota. You're from North Dakota, I'm not bagging on you. I know some people from North Dakota. They're amazing people. I have a friend, they've since moved to Hawaii, a person I felt was a wonderful coworker and a great friend, originally from North Dakota. Amazing woman. Really enjoyed everything about them. So I'm not bagging on North Dakota, but if North Dakota was a better place to live, there'd be more people living in North Dakota. It's that simple. I lived there for 3 years. I can say it sucks. Carrie, I lived in South Dakota for a year and a half, and I always say that was 17 months too long. But then I also preface it, I was all the way in the southeast corner, as far southeast corner in South Dakota as you could get, like literally 4 miles from where the Nebraska and Iowa border has its confluence at the Big Sioux and Missouri rivers, literally 4 miles away. And I have said many times, had I moved to Rapid City instead of outside of Sioux City, I might still be in South Dakota. Rapid City is, why not, Carrie? I mean, it wasn't Fort Hood in Texas, at least. I mean, Fort Hood. How appropriately named. I'll let you all unpack that for a minute. Wow, I've covered everything on an hour on the spot. Seriously, I covered everything we're going to talk about. Mic drop, hour. I know some people are asking about Jennifer. I don't know. That's my answer. I know that's not the answer you're looking for. Jennifer's taking an extended break, and that's what I can tell you. I really want to be back in Studio 3 for Thursday. Carrie, the coldest I've ever experienced was close to 20 below, and that was in South Dakota. I never experienced anything that cold. And what I remember when it was that cold, there was no wind, thank goodness. But I remember when it was that cold, we had a minivan. It did have front rear heaters. It wasn't singular heater. We had a minivan at the time. Both heaters cranked full blast as high as it could go. You had to keep an ice scraper inside while you were driving because your breath would condensate and would create hoarfrost on the windshield and the side windows as you're breathing. So even with the defroster on full blast. So you would have to have the ice scraper in there to scrape the windshield while you were driving. I'm checking headlines because, the news cycle moves fast, but things are... we covered basically a crap ton of local stuff. Oh, if you're really local, like hyper local, like if you're Kirkland, Bellevue, Woodinville, check out malcontentnews.com and check out our story about the Kirkland truck eating bridge and the guerrilla tactics that happened to try to prevent the truck eating bridge from eating any more trucks. The some community members made some improvements to that bridge, and at least today, it appears actually it did prevent disaster. Let's see. Weiselberg, who is Trump's CFO from the Trump organization, has been removed as a corporate officer from a number of the subsidiaries that he was with. There's a 17 million gallon sewage spill off the coast of Los Angeles that is requiring the closure of some beaches there. The massive heat wave in that area isn't going to help with that. Democrats in Texas have walked out, essentially blocking anything action on the anti-voting bills they want to pass there. Governor Abbott was on Fox News today saying, I will just continue to call session after session after session. Hey, Greg Abbott, you didn't spend one penny on improving your power grid that resulted in hundreds upon hundreds of deaths of Texans in February from either their medical equipment not being able to run or in some cases literally froze to death in their homes. This wasn't like a once in a millennia thing because we know that the total grid froze up in 2011. And we also know that it wasn't a green energy thing because the problem were natural gas lines and the water vapor within the natural gas lines condensing and freezing and blocking up the natural gas lines in several power plants and went offline. You didn't spend one friggin' penny on improving in that. You didn't tell the railroad commissioner you want his friggin' resignation. I know they're elected. Maybe you can. I don't know. You didn't do any of that stuff. But you found $250 million to throw at a wall that the landowners in South Texas don't want. And some landowners in South Texas have flat out said, any government official comes here trying to take my property to build a wall, I'm going to put a bullet in their head. Because Texas. And I lived for Texas for 8 years. I do have some exposure in how Texas think. Wildfire. I didn't talk about smoke. Air's going to be pretty chewy in eastern Washington tomorrow. The 24-hour forecast looked better from this morning than from early this evening. The morning forecast for tomorrow looked pretty gnarly for eastern Washington, basically anywhere east of the Cascades. It did get a little better. What's interesting, the models you got to take a little bit with a grain of salt. What's really interesting to me, Spokane for tomorrow, at least right now, actually looks like it's in this little finger of air that's it's not going to be great, but it's not going to be air that you can chew. But big sections of eastern Washington tomorrow are going to have the gnarly, gross air that you can chew. So that's unfortunate for that. Quick check of headlines before we go here. We've talked about this. Oh, 3 more people had crap thrown at at their cars from I-90. There's been 1 arrest, 2 other incidents, no arrests attached to that. So clearly we know that this is more than 1 person. Washington State, I forgot to talk about. We hit an inglorious landmark, which is we rolled over 6,000 COVID deaths since the first COVID death recorded, which was technically February 29, because we were a leap year in 2020. I just went, there's no February 29. There was in 2020, and there'll be another one in 2024. The first death officially recorded on the 29th, and that was the first officially recorded COVID death in the United States. And I know we can get real pedantic and go, but the research says that maybe, but that's the first person that we know. Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they've added a warning to this that there can be an autoimmune disease. They're seeing a handful of cases for the millions and millions of doses that has been done out of that. The Pierce County drug unit was shut down because of internal politics and people fighting each other, and because Ed Troyer's just doing such an amazing job down there in Pierce County. That has been opened back up down there. Check one more. Let's see here. Yeah, we already talked about that. We already talked about that. I'm just doing like a real quick check on the headline, see if anything here is jumping out. Just hate to go off the air. There's the one more thing I want to. All this discussion on Pfizer, booster shot or no booster shot. Basically, what they're saying is no booster shot. Kyle Rittenhouse is MIA? Really? Well, that's one I would have missed. Like I know the whole thing. Like I know, like John Pierce, the lawyer, essentially has ripped Kyle Rittenhouse off. Like basically every human being on the political left was like, this guy is a shyster. He's just using Kyle Rittenhouse to fire up the political right to give him a lot of money because he knows they're stupid and they're going to hand over the money and Kyle's not going to see a penny of that money. And guess what? That's exactly what's friggin' happened. And John Pierce should be warm in a friggin' jail cell. I'm not seeing anything about Kyle Rittenhouse being about being MIA. I am seeing something that prostitution is looking to introduce evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse is actually fully associated with the Proud Boys. I'm seeing that from the Kenosha News. And checking that. That's an interesting development. Last thing I actually want to talk about real quick in general news. John Sullivan, Jaden X. We did an expose on him leveraging the work from Rebellion Baby. Rebellion Baby, we reached out with them and say, hey, can we use this? They're like, yes. Rebellion Baby did tremendous amount of research. I know the work that they got amplified by Keith Olbermann, which had positive and negative connotations to that. The biggest thing that they kind of pointed out is that John Sullivan, Jaden X, is in things for John Sullivan, Jaden X. And you know, he has this weird relationship with this brother who's a Proud Boy, and his brothers appeared at Jaden stuff, and he's appeared at Proud Boy stuff, and they talk about each other, and it's weird, right? All of those dynamics are weird. You step back and you look at it, it's just all of it's all sus and things that make you go, John Sullivan, Jaden X, was more of a household name in the Black Lives Matter protest community because he was pushed out basically of every city that he went to for just operating as total sus. He became a household name after January 6th because he is the person that filmed Ashley Babbitt being shot as she violently broke her way through the door, trying to access the chambers into the house. And let's remember, Donald Trump, it wasn't a love fest. You know, we have that down there in the scroller. It wasn't a love fest. No, it was an insurrection, and they were trying to yeet the vice president. They were trying to yeet the Speaker of the House. They were trying to yeet Senate and congressional leaders. And by yeeting the vice president and by yeeting the Speaker of the House, you could make yourself like emperor. They also wanted the mahogany box with the Electoral College ballots in there because, of course, if that was compromised and never got their hands on, then we would go, well, we don't have any of the ballots, so I guess I'm just going to have to continue to be president. Yeah, the plan didn't work out, Donald, on that. And Ashley Babbitt is very clearly, not just on John Sullivan's video, but on other videos that were shot there, warned multiple times, not just by the police on the other side of that barricade and door, that anybody that comes through there is going to get shot, but even by people that were filming, for whatever it's worth. Even John Sullivan was like, got a gun. And there were people telling her, don't do it. It's all on the video. And anyway, I'm off on a rant. John Sullivan, it was on his Facebook page. He had trigger warning. And also, whenever we talk about this topic, mods, admins, if you can look up the phone number for the suicide hotline, drop it in there. Put it on his page, or not, we don't know. Somebody put on his page that John Sullivan had killed himself today. John Sullivan was handed bad legal news on Friday in appeals court said no, the government can garnish the $90,000 that he got from selling his video. His lawyers were arguing essentially he can't support himself, he can't buy food, he can't pay rent, he needs this money just to to hold on to things. And the appeals court was like, nope. That money is ill-gotten. He was an active participant in the insurrection. He wasn't operating as a journalist. His own actions, his own words show that he was fermenting people to do there. I'm into the word yeet right now. I know I'm really late to the party on that. Yeah, they were just tourists doing tourist things. You know, that was same thing on June 1st, Seattle police. That was just tourists up at those barricades of the Pink Umbrella. They were just doing tourist things. And then you went all medieval on their ass. So his brother James then posted, who is the Chud brother Proud Boy, that John, didn't yeet himself. He did not kill himself, and that he's alive and well, and that he really needs help, and it's a cry for help and a cry for attention. Then John Sullivan himself has allegedly posted on a different channel that he is alive and well, but he didn't put up those posts. That account has been hacked on Facebook, and it's all not true. So I don't know. I'm just telling you what we got. When the word came out, my inbox started blowing up from multiple people. Like, we put a thing up on Twitter, and it was kind of like, there are reports. We did not go, John Sullivan's dead. We said there are reports, and there are people later. There's other people saying his life. It's like, we know. We're trying to figure it out. So I don't know. He's probably alive. And of what I have observed from the outside, it's probably just drama cells. Although I don't think this is going to work at this point. I think people will have to look it up. Pam, yeet. Yeet's a weird word. It's almost like the F word, and that you could use it in like 50 different situations. And yes, if you are having suicidal thoughts, if you're feeling hopeless, the telephone number to call is 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Hotline. As a suicide survivor, as somebody who has lost a couple of close friends through the years through suicide, I always like to say, the state that you are in right now is a temporary state. If this is what is feeling and what is consuming your soul, it does get better. And what you're feeling in the moment is not a permanent. And believe me, I have been there where it just like the anguish and the suffering is insurmountable and you can't cope. If that is the place that you're in, if you're hearing my voice, 800-273-8255, they will answer, and the word help. Last thing I'm going to close with, and then yeeting everybody in power. Julius Caesar got the yeet treatment. Or unalived, that's the other one. Words that you use to get around moderation and people, they're doing hate speech. You just said yeet. Last thing, oh my goodness, I'm just looking at some of your comments here. Last thing I want to say, we had received like a couple of months ago this message from, it was like a bizarre message from somebody who's like, I kind of watch your show. My kid watches, and they're from college, and they, the chud, and that word's just so yesterday, and blah, blah, blah. Thank you, Justin Roiland, for making chud not so yesterday and making it totally topical again. Thank you so much for providing me 20 or 30 clips of the words chuds and describing them and what they are in last night's Rick and Morty episode. Oh my God. There were chuds, but they were not cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller chuds, although they were cannibalistic and underground dwellers. They were cannibalistic horse underground dwellers, because of course they were. Anyway, there's some magnificent quotes and snips that I can't wait to add. We may do an updated Rick and Morty chud button so that nobody can go, well, that's yesterday. And by the way, as somebody who's a huge Rick and Morty fan, I was wearing a Meeseek shirt last week, and the original name Malcontentment Tango, and of course Malcontent. There's a nod to Rick Sanchez in that. If you ever watch the full closing of the show, you know that. Uh, with that said, I think season 5 has been amazing, but I do think that yesterday's episode basically sucked, other than the fact that we're chuds. I actually think it was one of the worst episodes they ever did. Um, I don't know if that's the case, just because the first 3 or 4 episodes of this season have been so amazing. The episode last week was just fantastic. It was like, this is like one of the best episodes, followed up by one of the other ones. Throwing something away with vigor. That's a good point, Amar. And yes, I would just, start as a basketball term, is what I understand. All right, I saw a bunch of your food things that you all didn't like. There's a shit ton of comments I have to scroll through here. Let's see. I know that I was already like, oh, don't be hating on liver and onions, but I totally get it. I know there were other ones here. I saw some other one. Like, I saw celery and cilantro. So celery and cilantro, that's like a genetic thing. Um, and you probably don't like black licorice either. People who think that cilantro tastes like soap, there's actually like there's a gene attached to that. In general, if you don't like cilantro, you think black licorice just tastes freaking horrible. Also, I saw a bunch of other food items but now I can't find them. Um, you guys had listed all these food items, and I know we were talking about Whataburger and In-N-Out, and it seems as though whenever Whataburger is food of the gods. When I go to Texas, first thing I do, literally, get off plane, pick up rental car, closest Whataburger. Those are my orders of priority when I'm in Texas. If I by chance on Southwest through Love Field, because there's a Whataburger at Love Field, then I go to that Whataburger, because Whataburgers are open 24 hours. And my mouth is watering just thinking about this. Although I wouldn't get the Diet Dr. Pepper now. I've completely yeeted all artificial sweeteners. It would be a Diet Dr. Pepper before, but no. But I get a What a Chicken sandwich, no mayo, with extra, 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 extra ketchup. And then a Whataburger Junior by the book, so with the mustard and that. And I get the onion rings. I don't get the fries because onion rings are so good. Just that What a Chicken, that was like the most amazing chicken sandwich before there was a friggin' chicken sandwich. Before everybody had a flippin' chicken sandwich. And yes, I literally say 5 ketchups, and I've had people like, really? I'm like, yeah, like you're like, you just kind of want it dipped in ketchup. I'm like, yeah, that's, if you do it that way, that's exactly, it's like, you've got it nailed. Oh my God, mouth watering. A lot of people are just like, what? With all the ketchup. And now they have the spicy ketchup there. So probably I haven't had their spicy ketchup, but I know they have spicy ketchup at Whataburger, and I've heard it has mega attitude. So I probably went there now. I'd probably be like, no ketchup, and I would just grab like 4 things because they use big ketchup things. I'd probably grab like 4 things of that spicy ketchup. Oh, Melly, yeah, we've requested records. I'm going back to some of your old comments. That's going to take weeks or months, or we may be told to go suck a rock. So I doubt it, though. Actually, we've actually been in press conferences. I actually got to ask Mayor Durkin a question at a press conference, which was kind of cool. We keep growing up. Damn it, you guys had all these food things, and I can't. My eyes are not gleaning these out here. You all had all this stuff about food. I know there was like all this stuff because it was like catching my eye, and now I can't find any of it. My eyes just can't find any of it. And then we were talking about Reading. There's not much in Reading. I'm seeing it's one of my least favorite cities. First of all, it's barely a city, and there just isn't a whole lot there. But I generally, when I drive, I fuel up in Medford or Ashland because gasoline, of course, gets a lot more expensive when you go across the border in California. Other thing is, If I top off in Medford and Ashland, then I have enough gas to get to Sacramento and beyond. So I don't have to do any more gas stops. So if I stop there, like Waireka becomes that first kind of town, but there's no reason really to stop for me at what, because I'm like, I just stopped like an hour ago. So I usually push on to Reading. And then there's a couple of restaurants there that I like. So that's why I go there. I can't find your foods. Other than the conversation Whataburger, y'all were listing off all of these foods on the foods you hate. And I remember I saw, it's like, I can't even find the one. Shelly, you're saying you don't like tartar sauce. I'm going to presume that's not a SpongeBob tartar sauce. And you're saying you don't like tartar sauce. I used to be into tartar sauce, but not anymore. I'm still kind of into ketchup. Although I generally like to try to find the sugar-free stuff. And I really pissed off on how expensive it is. Love black licorice. Oh, man. No. Black licorice just tastes awful to me. Yeah, yes, Chud was featured heavily in the latest episode of Rick and Morty. You better believe. Spinach tastes like metal. That's interesting. I love spinach. I love cilantro and black licorice, but hell no on celery. Interesting. No tomatoes. Tomatoes is one I hear a lot. Oh, Taco Cabana. I haven't been in a Taco Cabana forever, and I remember in my younger days, my I was in my my young 20s in Texas. Oh my God, Taco Cabana was amazing, and they had a competitor. They got sued. That competitor got sued for essentially copying Taco Cabana's everything and just calling themselves something else. And Taco Cabana won. And I can't remember the name of the competitor to save the cream corn to me. If you grew up eating creamed corn, that is like sign number one. You grew up poor. Or low income or lower income, and I had cream corn as a kid, and I liked it, but now I know better. And cream corn to me is what the hell. Okay, now Pam, you're the inverse of me, right? Cilantro tastes like Stope. You like black licorice. That is so there is a gene variant on this. And that's a very unusual variant. Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent and I are the opposite. We love cilantro. Cilantro tastes amazing to us, and we both hate black licorice. And all of that there. Caraway tastes like poo smells. What? I can't do black licorice, and I can't do anise or anisette. I can only do a little bit. And if something is really, really hardcore with basil, like lots of basil, and basil's there's some Thai dishes where basil's like the main flavor. It tastes licoricey to me. Kimberly, I'm sorry about the cream corn. Biting of a fresh blueberry makes you gag. Wow. Okra. Okay. So Shelly, I don't know, maybe just okra is another one. If you've had okra made wrong, if it wasn't peeled, if it was overcooked, if it's all slimy, okra's horrible. My introduction into okra in Texas was fried okra. And then I was very fortunate as I expanded to things like gumbo and okra tomato. My first experiences weren't this slimy, overcooked, gross okra. Oh, Dan, little green balls of death. I'll eat anything. Listen, liver sucks. Arugula. Shelly, I'm not going to spare you. There's best friend in the whole world. My best friend in the whole world, Bill. There's a big joke between him, me, and arugula, and a total dive restaurant that is really famous in Massachusetts called Carl's Oxford Diner. It's super famous for just having massive breakfast, an old school breakfast. This is your old school bacon, eggs, and potato breakfast with just a real cup of coffee kind of place. And if you're a local, and because I grew up in that area and the place, that restaurant's been there the whole time, I kind of, it's not a secret handshake. I say it sarcastically, but I know the secret handshake to get kind of on the hidden menu, which basically is like, let's say you want eggs and bacon. Like, you don't, because on the thing, they've got 1 egg and 2 egg, right? Any other place on the menu, you don't, you don't specify a number. You're like, I want eggs. I want the eggs and bacon. How many eggs? I want I want eggs. And then you get like four. Then you get like of course you don't get them for free, but then you're kind of like off the hidden menu, and you get like 4 eggs and like what looks like a friggin' pound of bacon and potatoes until they're coming out of your peas. It's fun. Here, Rashi, you'll appreciate this. Dr. Mrs. Malcontent, I don't think she really likes frozen peas, but she likes canned peas. Really likes and canned peas are apparently really, really big in what I've learned in Russian cooking and Russian cold dishes. Canned peas are a big deal. Baby corn. Baby corn was weird to me, and I have been wow. Ground beef. Kimberly, is that a texture thing? Mushrooms is real common. A lot of people don't like mushrooms. It's a texture thing. It's a flavor thing. It's all of that. Wow. Lemon awesome, pepper awesome, lemon pepper boo. So, Frogwine, you might appreciate this if you're still on. I love lemon. A matter of fact, there were times actually I would eat lemon, but lemongrass, no, it's not my jam. Big debate on spinach. Bell peppers. A lot of people don't like bell peppers. I nuke some pork dumpling. There is homemade chicken soup waiting for me downstairs that Dr. Mrs. Malcontent made, by the way. Not a basil fan. Look at this. Oh, you stinky cheese. The stinkier, the better. Yuck, it's like eating a slug. You, I would say you didn't have it cooked right. I want all the eggs today. If you're ever in Oxford, Massachusetts, Carl's Oxford Diner, um, it's a definitely real salt of the earth place there. Uh, not a place to go if you're a vegetarian or like have concerns about love handles or cholesterol or am I going to have the meat sweats later on? This is not your jam then. if you're just now, Shelly, I can't do mushy peas. See, this is funny. Rashi's see, and I'm not a big fan of the canned peas. See, there you go. Russia's sister-in-law named Yulia loves mushy peas. Dr. Mrs. Malcontent loves mushy peas. Totally. Vegemite, yeah. So Vegemite, like straight up, is like eating Play-Doh. The trick to Vegemite that I have found, Kangaroo and Kiwi has this. You get a Vegemite cheese toasty. It's essentially a grilled cheese with just the thinnest little veneer of Vegemite. That's good eating. Tastes like gasoline on the green peppers. Mama KDM, I've heard of this of people liking the colored peppers and not liking the green ones. I've heard this. More people on basil, people on green things. I don't know if fate me. The old veggie burgers. Yeah, Catherine, um, Red Robin like years ago, they had like this fake veggie burger, and I'm not like I'll be accidentally vegetarian or accidentally vegan. I don't go out of my way to be it. But that would be sometimes I would be like, and it's like I want the vegetarian burger. Give me that. It was really good. There was a restaurant in Kirkland called The Slip. The original owner shut down. Someone reopened it. It's called The Slip, but it's different menu. It's different recipes. They have things from the old Slip, but not everything. And they're different recipes at the end of the day. The old Slip had a house-made vegetarian burger. So they made their own patties in there. And oh my God, it was Like I would go there. I was like, I want a vegetarian burger with peanut butter at the Slip. The guy is so good. Lutefish. Lutefish is just Swedish gefilte fish. Yeah, tripe. Tripe is tough for me. Um, like I can do tripe in like in a soup, like in pho. If there's little pieces, I could do a little bit of it. Yeah, Vegemite tastes like soy sauce and yeast paste. Nailed it. Nailed it. And I think I've caught up to all your questions. There's a whole hell of a lot I won't eat. So what's my food? Because I haven't gotten into the food I absolutely hate. I hate grapefruit. I like fresh grapefruit. That is just horror to me. It tastes unbelievably bitter. And this is coming from somebody who can drink black Starbucks coffee, which is just bitter, who eats 100% chocolate, no sugar, like, basically eats straight cocoa. When I was a kid and my mother would have unsweetened baker's chocolate, I would eat the unsweetened baker's chocolate. So I'm not afraid of bitter flavors. And grapefruit is horrific to me. It is so, so bitter. The crazy thing is, though, grapefruit candy, dishes that say maybe cook with grapefruit, that stuff I like. And I've had, well, just put sugar on it. Like I remember as a kid, my parents were, well, put sugar on. They ate a lot of grapefruit. Grapefruit were cheap. I mean, they would like carpet bomb the top with sugar. It's like, this isn't helping. It's just bitter and sweet all at the same time, and not in a good way. See, look, just put sugar on the grapefruit. No, it doesn't work. The only I'm not okay with any grapefruit. This is so funny. I hate grapefruit in general. The only grapefruit I've ever had in my life was a local variety in Nicaragua. Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent and I were in Nicaragua, and there was a street vendor, and they had some grapefruit, and she went and got it. And she was like, "Give this a try, just try it, because I'll try anything." And I trust Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent. Of course I do. She's my SO. I love her. And it was I wouldn't like go out of my way to eat it, but it's one of those, if I was in Nicaragua and somebody was like, "You want one of these grapefruits?" I would say yes. I guess that's the best way to put it. I might say I say yes as in not to hurt people's feelings. It was edible. I guess that's the best way to put it. I did find that the pith, the skin on the outside, was still ridiculously bitter to me. But if I kind of peeled away that little thin membrane and I had just the little fruit, that actually was pretty good. And the outside was greenish. The skin, the rind was kind of greenish. It was not, like a ruby red. It didn't look like, it was the size of a grapefruit. The inside looks like a grapefruit, smells like a grapefruit, but the outside, it didn't. It wasn't like an unripe grapefruit. It's a local variety that's like in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Honduras, Guatemala, in that area. It was really good. I remember that. Um, I know English and bad English. And I know enough Spanish to get into trouble. Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent knows English, Russian, Hebrew, including all three alphabets, and knows at this point more Spanish than me. She's the brains of the operation. Um, yeah, a lot of people are buzzing about the Anthony Bourdain thing. I've seen that. Yeah, I know too, English and bad English. I know both very, very well. All right, malcontents, that's it. I think we've talked all about the foods that we've hated. I think we've had that. You guys are trying to hold me in here. You know what? Coffee in Nicaragua, coffee within Nicaragua, it wasn't, the coffee was kind of woe and disappointment there. We were a little surprised by that. We were expecting better coffee, and coffee for Nicaragua was, Dora spent a fair amount of time there. we were fiercely disappointed with the quality of coffee in Nicaragua. A lot of it was pretty weak and watered down. We don't know if that was for economic reasons, but anywhere we went, even if we went to we even went to a couple of places where people, oh, this is a really good coffee place, we'll take you there. And even there, the coffee was like, yeah, it's good. It's good. The narrative in my head is like, yeah, keep bueno. I don't want to hurt your feelings. It's kind of watery, but it's kind of disappointing. Chocolate there, on the other hand, chocolate was really good. And fruit, man, there wasn't like one bad piece of fruit in Nicaragua. And one of the things I loved was in Nicaragua was, on the street, they're just people there, like, yeah, I want a papaya, right? And they just get the big machete out, and they give it to you in a plastic bag. And there, and it's it's not even like $1 American. It's like 50 cents, and oh my God, it's so freaking good. And avocados are off the chain in Nicaragua because that's where they originally came. They have avocados there, like, this is the avocado god. What was that? What was your experience in Guatemala, with the coffee or with fruit? That's a great story. That's a great story. When we first arrived in Nicaragua, we booked a hotel pretty close to the airport. We purposely booked a crash pad. We're pretty adventuresome travelers. We essentially booked a crash pad. It got good ratings for being safe and blah blah blah. But I mean, it was Managua. This was not tourist district. This was, I think the taxi cab driver, we gave the address, there was a little element of like, are you sure that's where you're going? Yeah, we're going. That's where we're going. And we hadn't had dinner and we were hungry. And so we got, told, oh, go to this place. And, totally just, this is areas where where I have thrill issues and she does it. Like, this is going to be an adventure. We're going to go walk in Managua at 10 o'clock at night to go get dinner. And again, and we're not in what you would call a tourist area. Boy, she was so nervous when we were walking there. And I'm like, our hotel would not send us to our deaths, right? He was very, very specific about this street and that street and stay. He was very, very specific. We had an amazing meal and it was just, oh God, it was so cheap. And everybody in there was so happy. And my heart aches for the country because everything that's going on there. It's definitely intimidating. It was. I mean, my head was on a lot more of a swivel walking there than walking back. Walking back, it's like, okay, this is all cool. This is fine. And in the morning, because it's night, in the morning we woke up, that's when we were like, whoa, we're in Managua. So like, we are where the people of Managua live. Like, oh, look, there's donkey carts in the street. We hear roosters crowing at 6:30 in the morning. Anywhere you got to keep your eyes open. Pioneer Square at 10 o'clock at night. I probably, I actually might have my head on a little bit more of a swivel at, I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I see the link. I'll have to look it up. I would have my head more in a swivel in Pioneer Square at 10 o'clock at night in Seattle than I did in Managua going through there in 2018. Anyway. Love it, Sarah. He's not so the caramel loathing New Zealander. Caramel. You hate caramel. How can that be? Caramel's wonderful. Cadbury is the best caramel. I forgot who, but didn't like Hershey buy Cadbury? Hershey totally effed up their chocolate, but at least they left the caramel alone. All right. And with that, everybody, I am going to say Malcontent out. Be good to each other. We will see you on Thursday. Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile! You're the malcontent!
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontents Antifa, fuck you!
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter.